this relationship that I have with, I'm going to say, my phone. But on the other side of the phone is all this basically 24/7 dopamine.
Right.
That when people actually grok that it is designed, engineered, as you use the word engineered for in the novel, 2 or 3/4 of the way through, this is where the climax is. To me, that should be a wake-up call. It's not always, but you have called this, I think, the hypodermic needle. Is that right? The hypodermic needle of the modern era. To me, this is a warning shot, right? We are all subject to this. And I think if I surveyed my friends, there are lots of people who are on the receiving end of this. And again, it didn't start off to be evil, but we have come to know it as we're 24/7 dopamine addicted. What can you tell those folks who are now listening? What are some things that you would say to these folks who are now curious about their consumption habits?
Well, I think the main thing to realize is that this constant consumption of reinforcing digital media, in all its manifold glory, that the cumulative effect of that over time can actually be to put us into a state that is very similar to a clinical depression or a clinical anxiety. That essentially what's happening as we're engaging in behaviors that release a lot of dopamine, our reward neurotransmitter, is that our bodies and our brains try to compensate for increased dopamine by decreasing dopamine production and transmission, not just to baseline tonic levels of dopamine firing, but actually below baseline. And that after a while, we can kind of get stuck in that dopamine deficit state. And that usually manifests not as, oh man, I'm addicted to this thing. What it manifests as is a very kind of a subtle and pervasive dissatisfaction with our lives. A kind of like, maybe I should get a different spouse, or maybe I should get a different job, or I really don't like this area, that I'm living in, or I need a new friend group. Whereas prior to engaging with these reinforcing substances and behaviors, we were pretty happy or pretty satisfied, with what we have. And so it's very difficult to observe this kind of decathecting or withdrawing from the world and a kind of isolationist self-titillation that makes everything else in our lives seem less than. And our focus gradually narrows on this one reinforcing substance and behavior. And then it takes on a kind of outsized importance in our lives. So it's not that we notice that the behavior is compulsive or that we notice that it's addictive. Instead, usually how it manifests is everything else kind of is not appealing or not as appealing. And that, I think, is a very subtle but important thing to observe.